Welcome back to another episode of the Outsider Sports Baseball Podcast. We're branching out a little bit, doing things a little differently, out with the old, in with the new, New Year's style, getting into that time of the year. We're going to have a new channel, the Outsider Sports Baseball channel. So make sure you subscribe to that, along with the football channel and everything else Outsider Sports. Show everybody some love, even that hockey pod that's going on full swing. Corey Jason here, Dylan Mel, John Pauline, Ben Mandel, bringing some baseball off-season hot stove talk. But before we get into the Ohtanis, the Sotos, the Yamamotos of the world, got to give the flowers to some guys that have came and went in the league. The 2024 Hall of Fame ballot has come out, and I'm going to run through the names on the list. I'm going to give my thoughts on who I think should be in, and hopefully you guys have some opinions too. Whether you agree with me, disagree with me, let me know. But to start things off, you have up to 10 players you can vote for in the Hall of Fame ballot. You don't have to vote for 10. You don't have to vote for anybody, even though if you don't vote for anybody, you should lose your vote. Probably be banned from baseball, in my opinion, because you're just stupid.
Corey likes to ban people from baseball a lot.
I love it. Except I think Pete Rose should be allowed back.
The one guy who's banned.
But so run it down. So you got Bobby Abreu, Jose Bautista, first year on the ballot, Carlos Beltran, Adrian Beltre, first year, Mark Burley, Bartolo Colon, Adrian Gonzalez, Colon and Gonzalez, both first years, Todd Helton, Matt Holliday, Torrey Hunter, Andrew Jones, Victor Martinez, first year, Joe Mauer, Andy Pettit, Brandon Phillips, Manny Ramirez, Jose Reyes, first year, A-Rod, K-Rod, Francisco Rodriguez, Jimmy Rollins, Gary Sheffield, last year on the ballot. You can have up to 10 years on the ballot. James Shield, Chase Utley, both first years. Omar Vizquel, Billy Wagner, first year, David Wright. So for me,
Big Game
James, not a Hall of Famer. But in my opinion, Carlos Beltran, Adrian Beltre, Todd Helton, Andrew Jones, Manny Ramirez, A-Rod, Gary Sheffield, and Billy Wagner are. I'm only taking 8 names. I know it's odd. I don't think Joe Mauer is a Hall of Famer.
We just love that you left off David Wright for Ben.
What do you mean?
No. Look,
I said David Wright was the last name I said.
No, you didn't say him.
I said in first year on the ballot, David Wright.
He slipped him in there.
He threw him and Chase Utley.
I mean, he's literally the last name alphabetically.
No. I thought you left him off your ballot.
Oh, well, he's not a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, that's what I was laughing about. I just thought it was funny to have you leave off Ben's guy.
Yeah, look, honestly, I think he read off a lot of names. I think that's a lot of people.
It's a lot of guys on the ballot. And again, you can only vote for 10 of them.
But that's you. I don't think all 10 votes needed to be cast.
Not this year.
No.
Usually I'm a 10-vote guy, but to me, there's 8 names this year.
I think that's high.
Yeah.
That's what
high.
That's more where I was going. I think that 8 names is a little bit higher than where I would go, especially.
Yeah.
But it is also fair because I know Corey wants those steroid guys in. He's been very adamant for a while that the steroid era guys should be in. So if you take those names off, then Corey's ballot looks probably around where mine is.
You take the steroid names off. You got Billy Wagner, Andrew Jones, Carlos Beltran, Adrian Beltre, Todd Helton. 5 names.
Yeah. I definitely agree with those, some more than others. I'm huge that I think Beltre should be in. You mentioned A-Rod. I think it's about time. Like you said, some of the steroid guys, it's a controversial thing. We can go back and forth for a while on this, but at a certain point too, I think what A-Rod's doing, positioning himself in the MLB on Fox, is ultimately going to get him in, being a good PR guy for them.
Look, I think that, at this point, they're just going to continue standing on the precedent that they set. We'll see. There are guys like Tatis Jr. that, a lot of people were talking about, did he just ruin his chance? A lot of other people were saying maybe not. I know Dylan, a couple years ago, I think I talked to you about this on your podcast, about how just maybe the timing of it would work out for him. But if you have a precedent, then that precedent has to stand. So we'll see as time goes on if they are going to continue to stick with it. I only have 3 names on my ballot. Corey, you did read 2 of them. Adrian Beltre and Carlos Beltran. I think Beltre, hands down, is probably if anybody on the ballot was going to get as close to unanimous, it would be Beltre. But I don't think anybody is close to that on this one. I think Carlos Beltran is one of the best switch hitting 5-tool center fielders we have ever seen in the game. He was fantastic, great player, great defensively, great offensively, and he had a run for about 8 to 10 years where he was one of the top 10 all-around outfielders in the game, and I think that's what being in the Hall of Fame is about. The other name I have is Joe Mauer. I know Corey and I, off the air, talking about our Hall of Fame ballots, got into this is the one that we really got into. And the reason why I have Joe Mauer is because he had a stretch of, I think it was about 7 to 9 years where he was one of, if not the best player at his position in the game. The guy hit for average.
What position?
Catcher. Corey, you can say whatever you want, whether he DH, whether he played first base a little bit when he was hurt. He was a Gold Glove for catcher. He was one of the premier players at catcher. He is 100% a Hall of Famer. Joe Mauer definitely deserves to be in. He is one of the best offensive catchers, one of the best ever to hit for average. No one at that position, no one at any position really, hits for average the way Joe Mauer would hit for average. He didn't have a ton of power in there, but you know what? It was kind of like a David Wright situation when they moved to Target Field. That wasn't a big home run park. That's the same thing with David Wright going to Citi Field. They didn't really help their big-time hitters in those situations. But, Joe Mauer is definitely someone who put up the length. He put up the numbers. And, in a position like catcher that he did play, he was one of the best defensively. And it's one of the positions where defense matters probably the most in the entire sport.
You defend Mauer like this, I really wonder what you're going to say when Gerald is on the ballot. Because Gerald was one of the instruments that ruined and made baseball the way it is. Completely softened the sport. Gerald.
For those of you who don't, I was going to say, for those of you who don't know, it's Buster Posey.
His name is Gerald. All right. Trying to act tough when he's soft. Made out of balsa wood. Not a Buster Posey guy. But what about some of the older names, though, Ben? You didn't have like a Todd Helton, a Billy Wagner on there.
And that's something I'm glad you brought up. I want this to be looked at as if all of these guys are on the ballot for the first time for me, because this is my first time voting, technically, right? Look at it that way. I think that Andrew Jones and Todd Helton are the 2 names that I tossed with the most. I think Andrew Jones more than Todd Helton. I think that those guys eventually do get in. They're just not there. I don't have them on this ballot for me right now. That's not who I feel like I want to vote for.
You have space. You have up to 10 spots.
I'm aware I have the space, but right now, looking at it, it's just not where I want to go.
You talk a lot about, runs. Andrew Jones had a 10-year stretch where he was the best center
I just
fielder.
said I really tossed with it. I thought, about it, but I didn't want to put him on. That's the end of the day. I told him maybe there's a little bit of Mets bias in there. Who knows? But I didn't want to put him on.
Who knows?
Tell me I'm not crazy for thinking that Ben's insane.
I wouldn't call Ben insane. Like he said, it's his ballot. If he wants to put whoever he wants, he can. I would put Jones on before Mauer. I'll say that. I think both are deserving for both of the arguments that you guys made. I think Ben's position on Mauer as being the best catcher in the sport for nearly a decade definitely holds a lot of weight. And I think if you were consensusly the best player or the top 2 in your position for a decade, you should be a Hall of Famer.
Not to mention Mauer had a slew of, I think he won like 3 batting titles. 2 as catcher, and I think he was the one. He won it in like and he's the only one to do it in the AL too. On top of that, plus Ben said he like batted for like 3.
And I
think
believe he was a
300
6-time All-Star as well.
6-time All-Star, I think. What, a 3-time Gold Glover?
Yeah,
3 Gold Gloves, 5 Silver Sluggers, MVP. Because I mean, at some point you get the award. I mean, the awards have to matter for something.
Of an MVP.
But the awards have to matter for something.
Nothing.
What was that, Corey?
Robbed of an MVP, stolen MVP, thief.
Look, at the end of the day, he has a Hall of Fame resume, Corey.
I don't feel it.
But I mean, the awards have to count for something.
It's your ballot. You don't got to put them on.
You have 2 more spots. You have 2 more votes.
I do.
Had 8.
If I were to fill it out for the 10, I'd probably throw on Andy Pettitte and Bartolo Colon. Bobby Abreu, I think, is another guy that deserves some look.
Oh yeah, Bobby Abreu.
So just vote everyone in, but Mauer.
Honestly, I would put David Wright ahead of Mauer. And I think David Wright's an interesting case because I put him in the Don Mattingly boat, where if they got in, I wouldn't be upset because they were a Hall of Fame caliber player.
He didn't have the length in his career for it, and that's why Mauer had the length. Not to mention the fact,
Compila.
What kind of accolades has David Wright gotten that Joe Mauer hasn't? There's not a single award. Not a single award that David Wright won that Joe Mauer didn't.
An NL pennant.
That's not an individual award.
Picking at straws there.
That's not an individual award.
We are picking at straws. I'm just saying, like,
But that's the thing. David Wright never won an MVP. David Wright never won an MVP. He never won a batting title. It's not like David Wright went out there and was sitting here and being the absolute best player at his position. David Wright was fantastic. I love David Wright. But David Wright also had a ton of injuries. He only had maybe 5-6 full seasons in his career. That's not even if you have 6 great seasons. That's barely enough to get you into the Hall of Fame.
That's why I love the Hall of Fame debate so much, because there's so much to talk about. And then you have guys that we don't even mention, like Omar Vizquel is a guy that was gonna make the Hall of Fame until you found out about his locker room stuff with bat boys and domestic violence and all that stuff that we're not going to really go deep into. That's kind of taking him out of the running. You know, the character clause is really in use on him. You know, Chase Utley, I know he's getting some play, him and Jimmy Rollins. John, they're your boys, I know.
I have them both on my ballot.
Yeah, what's your ballot?
I got I think the only one I probably agreed on with you was Beltre. Adrian Beltre, because I feel like he's probably, like Ben said, the closest you get to unanimous and almost like a perfect example of what you would look at to be a Hall of Famer. Like a Hall of Fame career, I mean, it's just absolutely insane when you look at all his stuff, like over 3,000 hits, almost 500 home runs. He's like just, you know, like not too off from 100 WAR, which is absolutely insane. I think he has like 93 like career WAR, so it's like absolutely insane. So you look at that, it's like he's like the perfect example of what you look for. But obviously, you know, not everyone's going to live up to that. But if you want to look at, you know, someone who's truly a Hall of Famer, that's him. But I have Joe Mauer also on my list for my vote, and then I have Chase Utley, Jimmy Rollins, and Omar Vizquel.
Well, how do you feel about the character clause?
You're what is it? You know, you're looking at how they played in the game, not what kind of person they were.
According to John, you could domestically abuse ball boys, but you can't do steroids.
Yeah, but that doesn't take away what you did on. I'm just saying. I mean, it's not. Obviously it's bad, but it doesn't take away what he did, like on the field.
John says steroids is worse than a lot of the things Omar Vizquel did.
John says he could separate. John says he could separate the art from the artist. That's what he's saying.
It's so funny because I completely understand what he's saying.
Oh, 100%.
The way it comes out just sounds so much worse than it actually.
It sounds worse than it is, but I mean, you get to.
No, you're not wrong, John. You're not wrong.
John says Kanye West is a top 5 music artist of all time.
But I mean, am I wrong by saying? I mean, am I wrong? Like, you can separate the person. Like,
John needs to win one game. He's giving the ball to Kurt Schilling. But what about the fact that Vizquel is a bit of a compiler, though. He played 20 years at shortstop, really got those stats up there. And even though he played 20 years, I don't think he even reached 2,800 hits.
No, I mean, but you look at some other people you look at, like, they don't play long enough careers and stuff, and that's a complaint. But they put up a decent string of stats for what they did in a short amount of time. And I mean, granted, he played a long time, but I mean, he may not be there offensively, but he was so good defensively. And I mean, baseball is not all about offense, contrary as like what most people talk about, because all you hear is, batting average, and home runs, RBIs, and no one really talks about the defensive part of baseball much.
John's a big DRS guy.
I mean, I am. I mean, but you look at it, I mean, he was one of the best defensive shortstops of all time.
Yeah.
I mean, absolutely insane. And he had a decent offensive career too. I mean, 80 home runs, just shy of 1,000 RBIs. He had over 400 stolen bases. Like, he had a 45 WAR, and he had 2,877 hits, and a career average of 272. I mean, it's still nothing to really scoff at. I mean, and he had the longevity.
I scoff at it. Scoffing at it.
But I mean, he won 11 Gold Gloves.
He did.
That's absolutely insane.
But the Gold Gloves aren't voted for by anybody with any standing in baseball. It's just the Rawlings Gold Glove Company that gives it out.
Yeah, but I mean, you still have to. You still play great.
It's still a metric that has been used as
I don't know
to the best defensive player at the position.
Okay, Corey, you could stand on that if you could say that you haven't mentioned once this offseason that Anthony Volpe won Gold Glove as a rookie.
Noticed I was avoiding it in this, but I can use that as a way to discredit the Gold Glove, because as much as I loved Volpe, did he really look like he passed the eye test as a Gold Glove shortstop?
He did to me.
Was there a shortstop in the American League that you felt like was better than him defensively by a long, long stretch?
No, I thought everybody was pretty terrible.
Exactly. So how can you can't really discredit an award for who they give it
I'm not
to
trying
when
to
there wasn't
discredit it.
anybody
I'm just
to give it
saying,
to.
like, it's not like it's the MVP or the Silver Slugger. It's not voted on by people.
But the MVP is voted on by baseball writers. Are they the ones who really know the sport the best?
Honestly, I don't, based off how the Hall of Fame ballot has gone in recent years. I don't think they know the sport well.
With that argument and logic, you can basically
I
discredit all the awards.
Only person to vote for awards.
I mean, if you're not sold on the Gold Gloves, he has the highest career fielding percentage by a shortstop ever.
John,
and he played 1,000 games.
When I first started following the Hall of Fame balloting, Omar Vizquel was on my ballot. Like, I understand all the reasons.
Yeah.
I took him off for the character clause because I couldn't get past what he did. And I feel like he's a borderline candidate. And I feel like that's where the character clause either gets you in or out when you're borderline. If you're a good guy, it gives you over the top. If you're not such a nice guy, you get the boot. If you're
Get him out. Get him out.
He only had 182 errors in 24 years. 182 errors.
Yeah, except he had one big one in the clubhouse. Get him out.
I know, but it's not the Hall of Fame of character. It's the Hall of Fame of baseball.
Well, no. Character is a metric that they tell the people balloting to use.
Is that a measurable stat? Can I look on the back of their baseball card and see?
Yeah,
like it's a character stat.
Weight in domestic batteries.
It is definitely a measurable stat, and his is.
What's your character score on that?
What's your character score?
That's the intangibles on 2K. Where they have intangibles, that's your character score.
MLB The Show, what's your character?
Right in between slugging percentage on base is Bat Boys assaulted.
Oh, man.
Dylan, what's your ballot look like, though? You said you agreed a little bit. I don't think we got the full ballot, though.
Yeah, real quick, because I definitely want to get to some of the free agency news.
Yeah.
I got Beltray, Beltran, A-Rod, Mauer, Jones. Those are my definites.
I love it. But, we'll find out at the end of January who gets in and who's out. I do want to point that Jim Leland was elected by the Contemporary Committee. Tiger, Marlin, Skipper, all-around great guy in baseball. And also Joe Castiglione, the Red Sox broadcaster, won the Ford Frick Award. That's how broadcasters and journalists get into the Hall of Fame. So those guys will join whoever gets from the writer's ballot into the Hall of Fame. That'll be in July, the ceremony, but we'll find out at the end of January. But let's get into some Ohtani talk. I think that's what everybody wants to hear, right? Ohtani to the Dodgers. Doesn't have to move, doesn't have to do anything. But don't tell that to Colin Cowherd, because he started tweeting out, how LA's become the city of stars because Ohtani signed with the Dodgers. Nobody tell him where he was before.
He thought Ohtani was on that plane to Toronto. That's where Cowherd thought he was.
Fox needs to just stop telling their shows they have to talk baseball, because that's essentially what it is. Because Fox has baseball, they have the World Series, so they're telling guys like Cowherd, "Hey, baseball's going on. You got to at least throw a nugget in."
Yeah, and then he started throwing out draft picks being traded for Ohtani this summer.
Yeah, he was also talking about like something else with Aaron Judge that was you got to take anything that you hear on Fox Sports during the day about baseball with a grain of salt.
It's brutal, but Ohtani did sign with the Dodgers, 10 years, $700 million. I don't know about you guys, but my jaw hit the floor when I heard that. And that's going to go down as the worst contract.
We were talking about it going
history.
Down below 500 when we learned he was going to need Tommy John.
It just doesn't make sense to me. Ohtani is a unicorn. He will go down, if he's not there already, as possibly the greatest mythical creature to ever play baseball. Because it doesn't even feel right calling him a player, because he does so much more and so much different. And I do think he should get knocked for not really playing the field consistently. But the fact that he has to hit and pitch kind of balances it out. But $700 million, $70 million a year for a guy who might not ever pitch again, because you don't know. It's his second Tommy John surgery.
He's definitely going to try and pitch again. That's what the contract told me, that when they talked, he said he was going to at least try to pitch again. You don't give a guy that much money if you don't think he's at least going to attempt.
But you think it would be like circumstantial, though, like in the clause where it would be like maybe the base contract's around more where Judge was, and then if you can pitch, it bumps up to here like increments.
Well, no, because when you're in a bidding war, you can make it so it doesn't have to be circumstantial, right? Like, if you have Toronto who wants you just as bad, you no longer have that leverage as a team. But you bring up a good point, John. If this is clearly Ohtani saying he's going to try and pitch again, because what was Aaron Judge's number that he got? It was 8 years and
300 something.
Yeah, that's more than twice Ohtani is getting. 2 times as much as what Aaron Judge is. More than that. You're telling me that if Ohtani does not play the field and does not pitch, is worth more than 2 times as much as Aaron Judge?
Don't forget the unprecedented deferrals.
I don't care about the deferrals. I don't care about any of that. You're telling me that at the end of the day, Shohei Ohtani only hitting is worth 2 times as much as the guy who won the MVP over him 2 years ago. That's absurd.
He's not.
And I know you guys aren't saying that. I'm just saying in general, that's what this contract is. It's absolute insanity. It doesn't make any sense for anybody to give anybody this much money.
I'm going to get the Ohtani stands on my side for a second. When it comes to all-around business, the Dodgers will win out on this contract. They will make this back in twofold: Japanese TV 100%. Deals, Japanese sponsorships, Ohtani jerseys, Ohtani night, whatever you want to call it. And with these differentials, the great thing is, if they're not making their money back, they could just sell the damn team and get their money back. So either way, the people who gave him this money will benefit monetarily. Now, from a baseball standpoint, you guys are 100% right in the sense of this was an overpay. But in a bidding war for perhaps the greatest baseball talent of all time, sometimes you got to overpay. And I really think the Dodgers not being able to get over the hump, aside from in the shortened season, pushed them to do this. And I want to ask you guys, because normally baseball, we know team sport, a lot of goes into it. But you give Shohei Ohtani this contract, a decade, $700 million. If they don't win a World Series, is it a failure?
It's a failure if they don't win multiple. Are you kidding me?
It depends on what you determine. From a baseball standpoint, it's a failure, but from a business standpoint, like you were saying, Dylan,
they're paying Ohtani.
No. Just from a baseball standpoint. I mean, Betts, Freeman, and Ohtani, you have to win at least one.
Yes, but you look at Tampa Bay's payroll. Ohtani is going to be making more than Tampa Bay and the Athletics combined every year for the next 10 years.
Ohtani's making more than every NFL running back's contract remaining combined.
Yes, Ohtani could buy the Arizona Coyotes too at the end of his contract if he wants to dabble in an NHL franchise.
It's always going to be a failure unless he wins an unprecedented amount of World Series based off that money. But
I don't think it has to be unprecedented. I think if they win 2, he pitches for half of this contract, wins an NL MVP or 3, and continues to produce. Obviously, by the end of this contract, everybody knows he's not going to be the same player.
Yeah.
I mean, anybody who's it's going to be peak Ohtani for the next 10 years is out of their mind. But if for 5 to 7 years of this, he could be a great hitter, and for 4 to 6, he could pitch, I think it'll end up being worth it in the long run, especially if they can win.
But how many people are able to sustain their careers at their prime for longer than 2-3 years?
Not many.
It just hasn't happened. Like, the reason why we haven't seen, why we don't see generational superstars, look at who would you say was the best baseball player we saw growing up?
I mean, Trout.
I was even going before Trout. I was going to say Miggy, Pujols.
Miguel Cabrera, Albert Pujols, right? How long was their window of performing at excellence?
God, Miggy was what? Probably like 5 years?
I was going to say 8 years, really, for Miggy.
8 years if you count the buildup and the.
I remember him dominating from like 2010 to 2015.
And that's where he was at peak prime, and that's more what I'm going for here. You figure Ohtani entered his peak prime about 2 years ago. You've got maybe if you're lucky, 2 years left, I think.
What is the prime?
And he's not pitching for one of them.
27 to 33 is generally what's considered the prime. Maybe a year earlier, a year later, on either side.
Some people. It really depends on when you start. Like, again, the second time he's having the surgery now. This is you're taking a year of pitching out of his prime, and it's just none of it makes sense to do any. Like, the fact that the bidding war got to this point is what blows my mind.
I think that was all from the business standpoint, though. That's why it got so high, because every team knew they'd make Baku bucks having him on the team.
What about the conspiracy theories surrounding all this? That there was never actually a bidding war, and that the Blue Jays were never even in the same stratosphere as the Dodgers to begin with?
I don't believe that.
I wouldn't be surprised. I don't think Toronto was
that he wanted
them
from the Dodgers, so that his agency faked that flight. The billionaire that was on the flight, Robert Herjavec, he has the same agent as Ohtani, the same agency, CAA. So they put him on that flight to Toronto from LA to really get people thinking. They put it out there. They told Morosi that he was on the flight. JP Morosi got used by Ohtani's camp. The Dodgers even admitted that they didn't believe it, but it was just too uncertain that they couldn't ignore it. So that they upped the offer because they thought, we can't just lose him, even though they didn't believe he was going to sign with the Blue Jays, because all reports were on Friday he was going to sign in Toronto.
Yeah, so from my understanding, Toronto was definitely willing to pay a high amount. So I actually work with people that are Toronto-based, so they kind of have a little bit better of a feel for the team, etc. And Rogers owns the team, which for an American audience would be the equivalent of Verizon or AT&T owning a baseball team. So I was under the impression that Toronto normally never spends, but for Ohtani, money wasn't going to be an object because of certain business things. Now, ultimately at $700 million, maybe money became an object because we were all thinking 450 to 500, which when we were talking about this offseason, maybe 550. So maybe Toronto was willing to go to 600, which is still a lot, but an additional $100 million from the Dodgers staying in SoCal wasn't able to be turned down by
Well, he
Ohtani.
always wanted to be. He always wanted to be a Dodger.
Well, how about the fact that the Mets and Yankees basically didn't have an interest in even going near that?
Well,
I think that's telling. I think that is very telling.
No. It was Ohtani said he didn't want New York. The Mets and Yankees weren't even in the running.
Yeah, but they would have.
They would have never paid that much.
No,
smart organizations would have never paid that much. That's why you didn't hear the Braves, you didn't hear the Mets, you didn't hear the Yankees. Who was in the running? Toronto, who has generationally been underachievers, and the Dodgers, who have a major just bad voodoo around them, aside from bubble, Mickey Mouse, shortened season, whatever you want to call it, World Series. Those were the teams that were willing to overpay.
The report was that the Mets never even made an offer to Ohtani.
Well, because Ohtani
Steve Cohen said it was because he's like, well, they never reached out. You're telling me right now Steve Cohen wouldn't have even picked up the phone?
If Steve Cohen offered him $800 million, he still would have signed with the Dodgers.
It doesn't matter. He still would have picked up the phone to try if he wanted to.
Hold on, Corey. Listen, hyperbole. There's a certain number that if Steve Cohen offered, I promise Ohtani'd be wearing a Mets jersey.
Especially when you
understand what I'm getting at is that if Steve Cohen offered $725 million, is he wearing Mets or Dodgers blue?
Yeah,
that's not the point, Corey. He didn't even want to pick up the phone though.
But he didn't want New York. New York was never in the running.
New York didn't want.
Did the Mets
have that desire to give him that money anyway? That's what I'm saying.
The Mets met Ohtani.
But did they need him in the first place? I feel like they have more pressing matters to address.
Every MLB team could use Ohtani.
Yeah, but I feel like the Mets had more pressing matters than trying to.
Which is what the Yankees and Mets both came out and said, that they are going all in for the next guy that we're talking about, not Ohtani.
Yeah. So the one question I want to ask you guys, from like a baseball standpoint, money aside, Ohtani on the Dodgers is great for baseball. Fantastic. It's way better to have him on the Dodgers than the Angels. It's going to be great because odds are we're going to see Ohtani in playoff games. The Dodgers will find a way to get in there. They'll be 100-win team.
They made the playoffs with ease. They were the best regular season team.
Well, that's what I mean. But my point is, as baseball fans, whether we think it's an overpay or not, this is great for us.
Fantastic.
I mean, Ohtani on the Dodgers is great for the sport, though. And going back to what I believe Ben said about Coward, maybe it was Corey, people didn't even realize when he was on the Angels, he was in Los Angeles. Yeah. Clearly, sports figures didn't realize. This is exactly what Manfred needed for baseball. A little juice in it. Ohtani to LA. We'll talk about it. But Soto to New York. Getting the big guys in the big markets is perfect for baseball.
So let's go on to Soto, though, because I guess the first thing I want to bring up with Soto seemed always tied to Ohtani contract-wise, because Soto, at 25 years old, he is going to be like the youngest superstar since A-Rod hit free agency, back when A-Rod did in 2001. Does Soto's number begin with a 7, or does Soto drop down to where we thought he was going to be, the 4s, probably somewhere in the 5s?
Yeah, I don't think anybody's touching 7 for a while.
I don't think it happens in our lifetime.
I think Soto's probably around the 4s, maybe the 5s, depending on the length of the deal. But, we were just talking about it. The offer he's going to get from the Yankees is going to be in the 4s.
Now, would you be comfortable offering him $700 but for 14 years?
I mean, he'll be 44 at the end of the contract right?
No,
he's going to be 26 or 7.
He'll be 40 at the end of the contract.
I mean, I'd have to see what that comes out to AAV wise. I'm not a mathematician here. So $50 million a year. I mean, listen, we'll see how he produces this year. But if he goes and has, because he had a down year last year.
No, you're right,
he's
Dylan.
Young, but if he comes in and has an MVP level season in New York, is that a contract I'd love to give him? No, but if it wins the bidding war and the Yankees are in World Series contention, then go get it.
I mean, you have to. So the trade was Trent Grisham and Juan Soto for Michael King, Johnny Brito, Drew Thorpe, Randy Vasquez, and Kyle Higashioka.
I think Grisham is a sneaky piece in that trade as well.
Very sneaky, very good
Great
defensive
fielder.
replacement.
Grisham is essentially replacing what Bader was, but healthy.
Grisham will be finishing every game for Verdugo
or Judge.
Yeah, I mean,
one
of those guys is going to DH, and Stanton's just going to get sent to the moon.
Well, you know what Cashman said. Injuries are a part of Stanton's game, so I'm sure one of those guys will be DH.
Exactly. You're going to probably see Verdugo DH and Grisham just play center.
Which to me is disgusting because I don't think Verdugo is a good enough hitter to DH.
Yeah,
but
we'll see how he does in that stadium. I think he's going to love the short porch consistently.
I personally don't think the Yankees overpaid tremendously. This is probably on par with what I thought the Yankees would have had to have given up for Soto. I know it's 1 year of control, but now you beat out the Blue Jays. The Blue Jays are reported to have now been looking for a power-hitting lefty. Soto was a guy that they were looking at, but they were in on Ohtani, so they couldn't really go for it. So you usurp them, you cut out in front and get them out of the way. You make the deal. I have trouble thinking that this is a bad deal. I think it works out well for both sides.
He's going to love it in New York, too.
He's going to love it. He's always wanted New York.
Let's go.
Yeah.
The big question is...
He's made for it.
The big question is, does he, as one of the local sports talk show hosts in the New York area says, does he rent in the Bronx and then buy in Queens? Because that is a guy the Mets will be all over next offseason, and he's somebody that will not sign an extension. You would have to offer him an insane deal, and then even then, he'll probably take it to market anyway, thinking he can get bigger. So, does
Scott
he?
Boras client, he'll definitely be a free agent.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough bidding war, and I think even if he loves New York, that just makes it even more so Yankees versus Mets. And we're going to talk about that with Yamamoto because that'll be the first time we've really seen the newfound wealth of Steve Cohen versus the old money of Steinbrenner go head to head. The Yankees have never lost out on a free agent that they've really wanted based off money reasons.
I think the Yamamoto signing could be huge to keeping Juan Soto, of like the Yankees being like, hey, see this? We beat the Mets every time, man. You don't want to go there? Or, hey, change to the guard, man. People want to come play in Queens, and my check is bigger than theirs from Cohen.
Yeah.
Well, and I'll tell you right now, especially once you see they finally, Steve Cohen, his money was finally able to get rid of all those chop shops there by Citi Field. They're turning it into an absolute gorgeous complex. It is going to be huge. There's going to be, I believe, a casino, mall, restaurants, like sports books, all kinds of stuff there at Citi Field. But, so he's really investing in the imagery there. And then I think the thing with Soto, apparently he has said that Queens is where he wants to go. And I just don't know if he's going to get a contract like what we're talking about here, because like Dylan said, he had a down year last year. Yeah, the arbitration is huge this year. What he's making through arbitration is ginormous. But are we really ready to go and break the bank for a guy who has he even been in the MVP conversation?
I mean, he has, not at the top of it. And then the Mets also have the Alonso pressing issue.
And I was just going to that's the other point I was going to bring up is the Mets haven't even started talking with Pete Alonso. And a big part of that might be to see if they're going to be going all in for Juan Soto.
Yeah, there's a lot happening in New York.
Losing Pete Alonso, though?
No, I will die on this hill. You cannot lose Pete Alonso, even if you're trying to bring in Juan Soto. If you bring in Soto, you can't be doing it to replace Alonso. It has to be with Alonso.
So now let's talk a little Yamamoto, too. He's meeting with the Yankees during this week. It seems like it's a two-horse race, Yankees and Mets. The Dodgers were in on him. They're still kind of there, but now after that Ohtani deal, it just seems like it's between the Yankees and Mets. And for the first time ever, we'll see the two owners go up against each other. For years it was Steinbrenner versus the other guys that we don't even need to name for Ben's mental health. But it's going to be interesting. think it's not going to be a money issue where Yamamoto goes because I think they can both offer the same contracts. He's not going to touch $300 million. He'll probably settle between 2 and 280. I mean, 250 and 280, somewhere in there. It's just going to matter of where does he really want to play? Does he want to play for the Yankees or does he want to play for the Mets? Which team can sell him on the brand? Because the money's there. And I think we can all agree that both teams are willing to pay the same. I don't think it's going to be a bidding war that way. But what brand does he want to represent? Now, the Mets are more of an up-and-coming team now with Steve Cohen. Not that they haven't been around, but globally they just weren't reaching every corner of the world. But the Yankees are. The Yankees have been. Matsui, Tanaka, guys that Yamamoto and even Ohtani looked up to when they were younger.
Yeah, but you can't sit there and say Kodai Senga is just completely
no. I wasn't going to discount Senga.
I think there's two ways of looking at it, and we'll see which way Yamamoto picks. Because the first report that came out was Yamamoto wants to play with other Japanese players. So a lot of people thought the Cubs were in the running with Suzuki, and then the Mets, it was like Kodai Senga. That's huge. And then reports came out that he wants to play on the biggest stage possible. And next year, with or without Yamamoto, I don't think anybody's going to come up here and say the Mets will be a World Series team, especially in the NL. The Yankees could do something in the AL if they get Yamamoto, pair him with Juan Soto for next season, and make noise in the AL. So if he wants to go to the most win-now situation, that would be the Yankees. If he believes in what the Mets are selling, wants to play with another Japanese player, he could go there. I'm interested to see where it goes because obviously nobody knows where this guy's head is at.
Do we have predictions right now, though, before we get further into it? John, where do you think he goes?
I think he goes to the Mets.
Ben?
I'm sticking with the Mets. I need to bring the good juju here.
Dylan?
Yamamoto 2024, baby. Make the Yankees great again.
Yamamoto to the Yanks.
I can't believe John voted for the Mets. You really want that guy?
I think that. I mean, I think that's where he's. I don't want him to go there, but that's where I think
to expect John to say. I think the Phillies will be a dark horse team to come in and take him.
I mean, the Phillies should go after pitching.
They don't need starting pitching. They need relief pitching.
Josh Hader.
That's what I'm hoping for. Josh Hader.
Good thing Craig Kimbrell's not a free agent anymore. You can't bring him back.
Going to the Yankees rival, the
Orioles. Blow some games. Can't wait to watch Kimbrell give up a tank job to Soto.
The Soto shuffle in New York is going to go over so well unless he starts doing it while he's slumping, and the New York audience is going to hate it.
They will eat him alive.
I mean, I think he'll like it. I think the Yankee culture will be.
And honestly, Stanton and Judge are really great because for as all of Stanton's struggles, I don't think any athlete has handled New York in the midst of struggles better than Stanton. He's had a rough couple years, and you never hear a bad thing or a bad word about New York from him. You heard Gallo, Sonny Gray, Aaron Hicks, guys that struggled, talk bad about New York and the fans. Stanton's never said anything.
I have one name for you, Corey.
What's that?
Jason Day.
Who? Who?
Yeah.
Get out of here with that.
He never said a bad thing about New York.
He doesn't remember his time here. He doesn't remember it.
He's had a lot of bad things said about him.
Stanton, though, I mean, I think Soto's going to love it. I think the short porch, Yankee Stadium, the history. I think Soto's going to sign here long term. I think Yamamoto's going to be here. I think the Yankees are going to be fun again.
So I do want to ask both of you guys, Corey and Ben and John, obviously pitch in where you see fit, but for both of you guys, say Yamamoto goes to the other team. What's the direction then? Where does the money get spent if you could?
Jordan
the Mets don't really have – there's not really a big pitcher to go get
Montgomery,
like
Snell.
Well, no, because the thing with Yamamoto is his age.
Yeah.
The reason why you were going to send that money that way was his age. The Mets aren't going to go and throw all their money towards a veteran pitcher like Blake Snell right now. They need young, sustainable arms in their rotation. If you can get Blake Snell in a one-year kind of deal to try and see if you can get him on a bridge before a long deal, which he's not going to do. But, like, if you can, then maybe you try and go for Snell. Maybe you can pivot and go for a Montgomery. But for the Mets standpoint, if you miss out on Yamamoto, you're just plugging your rotation with Quintanas and Severinos at this point.
Yeah, the Yankees, so because the Yankees can't plug their rotation with those guys, it's you go for Monty, and then you hold out hope for Roki Sasaki.
But that's the Yankees can justify going out and paying someone like Blake Snell a little bit better than the Mets can, because the Yankees have a roster and a team that is planning on winning now. The Mets have turned around and said that they are trying to compete more for 25.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But you wonder if like one of them, they just kind of like maybe especially the Mets just kind of sit there and just maybe don't try to sign anyone and just wait for like the trade deadline and see if they can get someone there.
They don't have the capital right now. You can't sacrifice the farm. What the Mets need to do is they need to get Yamamoto, essentially, because if you can get him, then your top three in the rotation, if Severino can at least be decent, I agree. But look, if you can have Senga and Yamamoto as the 1-2,
I love them.
Those two guys, you get decent pitching out of the other three. It's a lot easier to pick up one arm when you have two good ones at the top of the rotation. They can survive. Yeah. They can at least maybe be competitive next year if you are able to bring Yamamoto in, especially because the offense should be better. But there really isn't a direction for them to pivot if it doesn't work out.
I will say, Corey, that I do think Yamamoto could crack $300 million because of the two teams that are vying for him. And since he's 25, you can do an 8 to 10 year deal.
I just don't think money is going to be the deciding factor.
Oh yeah, I don't think it'll be the decider.
Even if he does,
both teams will write the check.
320. I don't think either team's going to balk at the money. I don't think money will be his deciding factor. I think it really will be, where does he want to be, Bronx or Queens? Which team, which culture, which everything. Does he want to be the ace in Queens? Because he will be the number one with the Mets. Right, Ben? Do you just agree or disagree to that statement?
Oh, no, I 100% agree.
He will be the number one.
Yeah, Senga's good, but Senga's not a number one on any staff.
But Yamamoto would be the number one eventually on the Yankees.
Well, yeah, eventually, because eventually Garrett Cole gets older, but you still have Rodon and Cole. I think Yamamoto's slotting in there, and at best is a 2, more likely a 3.
He's your 2, and you let Rodon try to figure it out, who I fully believe will bounce back.
He's going to have an unbelievable year this year, Rodon.
Yeah, I feel like
Yamamoto will be the 2, and then it'll be Rodon, Nestor, and 5.
Clark Schmidt. Don't discount Clark.
I'm not discounting him, but the Yankees are still going to be looking for a 5th, 6th arm. And as much as your dismay, maybe Frankie Montas, they want to try him out again.
I kind of want Seth Lugo, right? He's a free agent?
Yeah.
He is.
Thank you.
I think he would be a really good fit.
What if he just ends up going to the Dodgers with Ohtani? You're all wrong. Takes less money, goes play.
I think we would both prefer that than him go to the other team in town, though.
I disagree.
I think
I'd rather him go to the Yankees than the Dodgers.
I think the Dodgers is a hilarious outcome, and if they get him and then they don't win the World Series, or if they get bounced in the first round again, the 120 win Dodgers bounced in the first round by the 87 win Phillies. I could see it now.
100%. It's going to be really funny. But we'll have to wait and see. That's going to do it here for us. Again, new channel, Outsider Sports Baseball. Follow the other ones. We're trying to do a little things different, a little more sports-centric channels, so you get all the content you want without any of the other BS you don't.
Let's be honest. We're 49 minutes in. It's to get into the YouTube algorithm better. If anybody's here at this point, this is an algorithmic move.
Not out of my mouth. But just keep tuning in. Again, outsidersports.com. Look at the article.
Outsidersports.net. You were right, Corey.
I was right. Who uses .net anymore?
Us.
People who don't want to pay for their website.
Outsiders.
Outsiders do.
YouTube, TikTok, Outsider Sports, Twitter, Outsider Sports 3. A lot of good stuff going on. But that's going to do it here for a free agency full hot stove episode. So we'll be back soon. Take a look at the Twitters for when we'll be back. hopefully doing some more free agency talk. Have a
Peace.
good one.